Hey, what's up? It's Emilio DiSpirito, and this is the Wealth Architect Podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you each and every single week. My team and I have hand-selected our guests to come on the program to talk about how to build wealth financially, mentally, physically, spiritually, right? There's so much that goes into building a lifestyle full of wealth, and we hope that this content really reaches you, not only in your brain, but in your heart, and that you could do something with this. So thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we're going to have a great show. Hey, a special thank you to our sponsor, Annie Mac Home Mortgage, whose Cash to Keys product is disrupting the industry. Sick and tired of finding the perfect home, not having your offer selected? I got to tell you, it happens all the time. With Cash to Keys, Annie Mac gives sellers a cash guarantee for each of their buyers' offers. Stop bidding and hoping. Instead, bid with Annie Mac and bid with confidence. Don't just bid, but win. Annie Mac Mortgage. When you're buying real estate, you need somebody that understands the ins and outs of the legal ends. It's so important to have the right attorney working for you. You also need a bulldog. Let me tell you something. The first time I sat in a conference room with this lady, Melissa Delana of Delana Law, I immediately knew she owned the room. You need an attorney that owns the room, that can solve problems and make things happen when everybody else can't. You want to hire Delana Law in Massachusetts, Connecticut, or Rhode Island. Delana Law delivers every single time. They're going to help you out with all of your real estate needs. It's delanalaw.com. You got to check them out. Welcome to the Wealth Architect Podcast. I'm Emilio DiSpirito, and this show today is all about preserving wealth. Okay, it's so important while you have the mindset of creating wealth to also preserve it and to be ready for life's unexpected happenings. Today with us, we've got a special guest, somebody that specializes in, unfortunately, the topic of divorce, right? But this guy is somebody I trust, somebody who I've known personally for many years. He's a top-rated attorney and also a poker player, so he's a strategist. In addition to that, this gentleman has assisted, he coaches his sons, both of them, his oldest son, Luke, to win. He was tied for second in the chess nationals, and his youngest son, Zion, fourth place in chess nationals. And John Larochelle, our guest today, the attorney, John the lawyer, they call him at the poker table, also has some amazing stories about beating some of the world's best poker players as well, which in my opinion makes him one of the best poker players. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome you, John Larochelle, to the show.
I'm honored to be here, Emilio. Thank you for having me. I'm humbled by the introduction. If I were one of the best, I would be in the Bahamas playing in the $25,000 tournament. But I had great times doing it. I learned so much about strategizing and how to anticipate what your opponent might be doing or thinking, and it's helped tremendously in divorce law and divorce litigation and in preparation.
So, John, can you give us just a story about when you were playing professional poker? Like a strategy or something, or a story that you think would resonate well with our entrepreneurial audience?
I think part of it is anticipating your opponent's mindset, whether that's in a divorce and you're anticipating what is important to your spouse or what might cause your spouse to litigate more than necessary. And I think anticipating your opponent's mindsets, if they're upset, they're going to be thinking differently. If they're calm and they've just won a few pots, that's a totally different mindset. And the same thing holds true in divorces. One of the first thing I counsel my clients on is let's do everything we can to not antagonize to the other side, to make it as amicable as possible. It's probably not going to be totally amicable, and that's understandable. That's why we're here in court. But at the same time, if you're able to anticipate the mindset or the reactions to proposals, decisions, offers that you're making, you can end up with a much better result. And that's the same in poker, and that's the same in divorces.
And there's so many times too where people kind of are holding this hand and it's a losing hand, and they're just stuck on that hill, and I would imagine you have to coach people through that, and you have to coach them, say, hey, you know what, you got to fold that hand. It's losing hand, get off that. Emotions are high. Really tough spot.
Great analogy, Emilio. That's exactly right. Because we want to win. I want to win every battle that we fight in divorce court, but I don't want to fight every battle. I only want to
No.
fight select one. So exactly right. Someone may come into the process feeling like they deserve this part. They deserve whatever it might be, certain
Yeah.
assets, or understandably, maybe a father is saying, well, I made all the money and I should get this. Or maybe a wife might say, I gave up my career, I've been raising my children at home, and now I'm not going to get any compensation for that after 10 years. And meanwhile, my husband has been out being a go-getter because he never has to worry about anything at home. And,
Hmm.
I think both of those are important to take into consideration in the beginning. But as things develop, it makes sense to give up some battles, to say, is it really worth pursuing this if it's going to antagonize the other side to fighting you on every other issue? Maybe you give in on some issue that you originally thought would be unfair, but you're getting
Hmm.
so much more overall in another aspect of the divorce. And yes, you're right. Frequently, it's making those decisions. What are your goals? Here are my 8 goals. Let's prioritize those goals. Let's focus on the most important ones. And if we have to give in on some other ones, we're getting what you want as far as your priorities. So that's the
Hmm.
approach that I take. And it's the same thing. Let's say when someone's dealt pocket aces in poker, they feel like they should win. They feel like they're entitled to win. But as the hand starts to play out, it's obvious you're not going to win this, and continuing to just say, all in, I don't care. I had the best hand to begin with. I deserved to win this. You're going to lose. And it's the same thing in
Hmm.
divorce court.
I want to start this as well with the fact that look, I'm a Christian. I come from a Christian background. I don't believe in divorce. Am I somebody who has gone through divorce, right? Yeah. I'm falling short daily as a man, okay? There are some situations where you have to get divorced, okay? It just kind of is what it is, right? And I'm not going to get into all those situations there. But what I want to tell our audience is that I am not an advocate of divorce. And oftentimes, helping people sell real estate, I'm getting calls, John, where people are like, hey, Emilio, my husband and I, or my wife and I, we're about ready to go through a divorce and we need you to sell a house. The first thing I say to them is, look, have you guys tried counseling? And they always I can hear the hesitation on the phone, like, what? Like, aren't you a realtor supposed to be selling the house? But no, I think that ripping families apart, okay, ripping the finances apart, ripping everything apart is just worse overall in most cases. And if you can save it, if that one conversation can save a marriage, fantastic. Or if something I can do or somebody I can point them into the direction of an easier divorce, a more amicable, a less confrontational, hostile divorce situation, that is better for the children. That is better for them. That is better for overall family and for their pockets, because things get super expensive when you start to fight each other, send the nukes, send the war. You know what I mean? So, John, we're going to talk about that in a bit, but I really want to focus on how people that are aspiring to be wealthy, or people that are wealthy and getting married, the conversation in which they can have with somebody to prepare them for a prenuptial agreement, why prenuptial agreements are important, and really how to move forward with one of those.
Thank you, Emilio. True words have never been spoken. And I do the same as you do, believe it or not. Someone comes to me, come into the office, getting to know their situation. My first piece of advice for them, unless it's
Yeah.
a domestic violence situation, and I'm not minimizing domestic violence, but I mean a domestic
Mhm.
violence situation where someone has been hurt. I don't just mean,
Yeah.
a scuffle where someone smashes something inappropriately. They're charged with domestic disorderly. I'm not condoning it, of
No.
course. But what I'm saying is, unless there's real violence, the best solution is to go to marriage counseling, even if it doesn't work,
Hmm.
because you're investing the time to make sure that you're going to have a 50% reduction in your total wealth. So before you just decide to have a 50% reduction in your wealth, what the time, effort, and money that you spend on marriage counseling is the best money you're going to spend, you will spend in the divorce process. And let's say
Mm-hmm.
someone goes to marriage counseling, or I've had people say to me, I don't think it's going to work. There's almost no chance. I don't disagree with them. I don't know their marriage. Maybe there is almost no chance that it will work. But if it's a 3% chance and it's going to save you $500,000 and marital harmony and better for your children and better for your family, is it worth a 3% chance? Let's say you go to 4 marriage counseling sessions. At the end of the 4th session, you say, there's no way this marriage can be saved. It's not worth it. And I'm sure I want a divorce. You're still better off. You're not going to have that thought 5 years from now. Did I do everything to protect my family, to preserve my family? That's all for the financial, for wealth preservation. I also agree with you that, of course, it's better for your children, your family, and the grass is always greener, as we always know. So like
Mm-hmm.
you know, when people have a consultation with me, the first thing I try to do is talk them into marriage counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I would go further. If you want to preserve your wealth and you want to preserve your marriage, before we get to the prenuptial agreement, which I'm glad you brought it up because it is the number one way to preserve it. It's a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
before you do that, how about investing in some of these things, which people, myself included, and my failures included? How about invest in dinners with your spouse? How about invest in some romance with your spouse? Not investing in gifts or jewelry, but how about if are you able to pull yourself away from work and commit whatever it might be, the money for a dinner, some time together? If you're spending that small money throughout the course of your marriage, you're going to be a lot less likely to face
Mm-hmm.
a 50% reduction in your total net worth. Not just that, your quality of life will obviously be better. And if problems come up, it's going to be so much easier to address those problems with someone with whom you have a romantic connection. And some audience members understandably are thinking, it's my wife, of course there's going to be some romance, or it's my husband, of course there's going to be romance. Yes, but as
Mm-hmm.
we all know, when you have children and you're a successful person and you are accumulating wealth, oftentimes the commitment and the prioritization of your relationship with your spouse is put on the back burner. But it's
Mm-hmm.
simmering and it's getting hotter and steamier. And if you want to turn the temperature down on conflict, then invest in small vacations, small getaways, in time that you're spending, coming home early, having a surprise, a small flowers or a handmade card. All of those things sound so trivial, but they're probably more likely to preserve 50% of your total wealth than anything here, except perhaps for the prenuptial agreement.
Wow, that could be like a paper, right? Like $50 a week can save 50% of your wealth, right? And it's not only, and John, that was some really great advice, because it's not only about doing that to preserve your wealth, it's about doing it to preserve your life, your relationship, right?
Yes.
And I think, right, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people are going into marriages without having the important talks about life goals, about family goals, about finance goals, okay? And I'm curious because you've been doing this for 31 years, John, okay? In your estimate, what percentage of divorces fall apart due to poor financial communication standards, anything financial? What do you think?
More than 50%. And although you might not be able to do a statistical analysis to find out, exactly what all the reasons are, the most
Mm,
frequent irreconcilable difference comes from finances. And trouble with finances spreads, meaning it might start as a financial problem, but once that stress begins to fester, and that
yeah.
leads into a lot of other areas. If one person is spending money frivolously and has very little regard for the marital funds and marital money, it's going to cause such resentment in the other person. And conversely, let's say someone expects that their spouse is going to work 40 hours a week and provide health insurance. If 2 years into the marriage, that spouse says, I only want to work part-time. I don't want to work full-time. Or I don't want to earn the money that's going to have us live in a neighborhood that we want to, or have the type of life that we want to. Having those conversations in the beginning is very important. Understandably, very tough. People, I feel as though, in my experience, everyone, not just spouses, all of us in our relationships, we don't want to have a tough conversation. We don't want conflict. We don't want to tell somebody, I think the way that you're doing it is wrong, or maybe not even wrong. I disagree with what your goal is in this situation. Let's talk about it. If you can have talks in advance, the expectations will be there, and you're going to save so much strife in marriage if you're on about the same page on many things. All of these, if they're discussed in advance, the expectations are going to be set, so there won't be as many surprises. It does begin with finances. Think of the things we just talked about. The neighborhood you're going to live in, finances. The school, are they going to be homeschooled? Finance related too. You can't homeschool someone if both people are working 60 hours a week. So what plans are you going to make to do that? If it's going to be a private school and you have the luxury of having that, what's the budget going to be on that? How will that get paid? All these conversations are conversations that are really going to make a better marriage, but I fear are not often had because of that. I don't want to say something where my romantic partner is going to feel insulted or feel like I think they have a shortcoming, or whatever the conflict might be. And you're so right, to have those conversations in advance is one of the most important things to preserving your marriage.
Yeah, I agree. And as you're talking, and I'm listening to all of this, John, the key thing that's in common with every marital situation where marriage falls apart is lack of communication. And communication is everything. And also, as you're talking, have you ever heard about how buffalo deal with a storm? Have you ever heard that story of how buffalo deal with a storm?
Do they
You got
through it? Is it something to that effect?
Correct. So you have cows, right? Like in the same field. You have cows, you have buffalo, okay? You got a storm that is off in the distance and it is coming, okay? The cows just sit there and they wait and they get stuck in the storm, okay? They're stuck in that storm. They're getting pelted with hail, with, maybe even potentially getting hit by lightning, whatever it is, okay? The buffalo run straight towards the storm. They get it over with. They get through it, and they get through it way faster than just sitting there allowing it to hit them. So you have to have these tough conversations, not only in your relationship, but with our children during times, in business, with business partners, with clients, whatever. Think about and picture those buffalo, run through that storm. It is going to suck, but you're going to get through it so much faster. You're going to feel better on the other end. You're going to get it off your chest. And communication is reconciliation a lot of times. That's just my thought on that. John, I wanted to let's talk about the prenup, okay? Can you explain, right? Let's do this in layman's terms, right? Because there's so many people here, I'm sure, that know what a prenup is, but I want to hear it from you in the most simplest terms, what a prenup is. And then I'm going to ask you some questions about it, why people aren't doing it, why, what they should do, what the conversations are, what one looks like, the potential cost, all that other stuff. Okay. So can you explain what a prenup is?
I'd be happy to. Let me put it to you in terms that many people have not thought of, but this is exactly what is going to happen. Picture, you go in to get your marriage license. Everything gets filled out. And at the bottom, there are two boxes. The first box, so you must check one. If we do get divorced, box A says, we want to decide how we will divide our assets. Box B says the government will decide how we divide our assets. How many people do you think when they're filling out that form are going to check? Our choice is for us not to have any say in it. We want the government to decide how our assets are going to be divided if we do get divorced. That is a prenuptial agreement.
So good.
So it's an uncomfortable conversation for many people. There's a feeling that if we discuss a prenuptial agreement or we contemplate it, aren't we really contemplating that we're going to get divorced? Aren't we really, I don't want to say jinxing, but, aren't we putting a cloud over our marriage because we're talking about what could happen if we get divorced? But the reality is, if you surveyed people as an hour before their wedding ceremony, and you said to them, what do you think that you will be divorced? I would have to think 95% would say, I don't think we'll ever get divorced. And maybe 5% would say, I don't know, we're doing our best, but there's a decent chance we may get divorced. But 95% are going to say, we're going to make it. We're not going to get divorced. We're so happy. We love each other so much. We're committed to each other for life. But the reality is over 50% of marriages end in divorce. So no matter how we have such a strong romantic feeling that we think it can't be us. It's not going to be us. But definitely, knock on wood, if there's a 50% chance it is going to be you. And God forbid, if it is going to be you, you're going to be so glad that you checked the box, that we decided how our assets are going to be divided rather than the government. What people may not be aware of with a prenuptial agreement is that you cannot decide any custody issues. So no one is going to get an upper hand with regard to paying child support or how much time they're going to see their children or who's going to have placement of the children or anything to do with the children. A prenuptial agreement is really, it should be called a wealth determination agreement or an asset division determination agreement. It has nothing to do with your children. And so maybe that will take off some of the stress for people who aren't sure about how to approach a conversation with their spouse about it. One of the ways I like to think about it is you can either decide when you have that feeling an hour before you're walking down the aisle, the romance is high, the love is at 100%. In that mindset, isn't it better for both people if while you are so in love and while you are really looking out for that other person, that you decide now, if things go bad, we agreed when we really loved each other, this was the right thing to do. So that if 10 years later and awful things have happened during the marriage and it's unsavable and you have to get a divorce, you've already decided how the wealth will be allocated, how the assets will be divided. Not only is that going to be a so much better methodology than having a judge decide for you what will happen, it's going to save you tens of thousands of dollars if you're litigating.
Oh, yeah.
It might be saving you hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the size of your marital estate. I mean, if you're litigating a $20 million estate, it's worth it to invest $100,000 or $200,000 to try to get an extra 5%, 6%. So the litigation costs will be expensive. The stress will be expensive. Your productivity
the stress is the
work
worst.
will be less.
Yeah.
Right? Your ability to focus at work will be less. Your ability to bond with your children might even be less because of the stress, because of the animosity with your spouse. But if all of this has been worked out when you were in love and looking out for one another, then how could that not be the best way to decide how the assets will be divided?
So well said, John. I got so many amazing takeaways from there. And, that point about we decide or the government decides, no one in their right mind would allow the government to decide. And if I was going to get married to somebody that said we want the government to decide, that would be a major red flag right there.
Yes, good point.
Like, what have they done right? What have they gotten right? John, let's talk about, right, different situations, types of clauses that people can put in, like, because I've never seen a prenup. Okay, I haven't seen one of those. And if like, you're going to get married, somebody's going to get married, they have some wealth, they've built some wealth, or maybe they're on the verge of building wealth. Like, what are clauses that couples put in? Are they put in, like, if there's infidelity, this happens, it triggers this. If so and so doesn't do this, this happens. Or are there standards? Are there things? Can you talk about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I've seen clauses and I've written clauses for almost everything. And a lot of
Mm,
times it is duration related. Maybe if we're only married 2 years and we get divorced, this is the way we're going to allocate the assets. But if we're married for 20 years, maybe we're just going to say it's going to be even Steven on all the marital assets. One thing that maybe people wouldn't know, and it might make sense to consider, is let's say you own $1 million house outright and you own it before you ever get married. It's in your name only. And
hmm
it's a house on a lake somewhere, and you're married 20 years. Now that $1 million house, 20 years later, is worth $3 million.
hmm
Well, although it was yours outright in before you were married, and yes, the court cannot come in and give something that you own. Well, I don't want to go that far. It would be unusual, but it's possible. But in Rhode Island, it is the court's not going to take a premarital asset and give it to your spouse except in egregious circumstances.
hmm
However, that appreciation in value, that is a marital asset. So
Oh,
you owned
wow.
it. It was $1 million. It's yours. But
Mm,
now that it's $3 million, your wife might be entitled to $1 million from that house. Do you have $1 million in the bank? Because if you don't, what are you going to do? You're going to be selling your $1 million home that you owned beforehand so that you can pay your spouse $1 million. Or you're going to refinance at 6.5% instead of 3%, or whatever it might be. You can change that in the beginning. Maybe you could say to your spouse, do you think it's fair if we're married for 5 years or under? Shouldn't I just get to keep this house? Doesn't that make sense? Maybe the
mm,
spouse would say, it does make sense, but what about, I mean, it's been 5 years. I'm going to walk away from the house. Should I get anything? I mean, that doesn't seem fair to me. You know what? I see what you're saying there. How about if we've been married 5 years, I'm going to keep 100% of the house, but I will give you $10,000 for every year we've been married. So you're going to walk away with $50,000 as an offset, so to say. You could write in any type of thing so that it's fair for both people. Maybe the spouse
hmm
would say, no, I don't think that's fair. I want some of that appreciation and value. If I'm in the house and I'm a homemaker and I'm maintaining the house and I'm keeping this great house for 20 years, I think I should get a portion of it. That's great. That's nothing wrong with that. Let's put in the portion. What amount should you get? Should you get 25%? Should you get 50%? Should you get 20% if it's 5 years or under? Maybe you agree. You know what? If we're married 20 years, we can just divide the appreciation even Steven, 50-50. But
hmm
you can customize it any way you want, whatever you want to do with it. And isn't that so much better than paying lawyers to fight about what could happen? One side's going to give all the reasons why it should be one spouse should have 50% of that 2 million. And the other side is going to give all their reasons, and you're going to go to court and you're going to spend hours in court and hours preparing. And this decision about how this $2 million in appreciation, that might cost you $100,000. So by just deciding in advance how you want to do it in whatever way you think is fair, that is such a wealth savings and such a preservation of an asset that outside of a prenuptial agreement, it would be impossible to achieve that.
That's huge. You know, the only thing though about putting a time limit on there is you might get a little angst as you're getting towards your 5-year anniversary in that situation, right? Or you're getting towards those timelines. So like for me, like that wouldn't fly. I wouldn't put timelines in. It would be like either black or white. That's it, you know. But John, that's very interesting. I didn't know that about the equity position. I didn't know that you would have to give up your equity position there. So that could be saving somebody millions of dollars here right now, just listening to this podcast. And, you know, we could go deeper into this. My suggestion is if you are in a situation where you're about to get married or where you are married and you have questions, you should reach out to John Larochelle or an attorney with Larochelle Law or an attorney in your marketplace. You know, John does Rhode Island and Mass, or an attorney in your marketplace that can help. Even if you reach out to John, he could probably refer you to somebody in your marketplace too. I'm not sure if you do that as attorneys. We do it as realtors. But John, to close this out, right? What is the cost and the time it takes and the investment up front when working with, say, a top tier attorney to do something like this, to put a prenup in place?
What I do is I charge by the hour, and my clients are getting a benefit because, I have these templates that evolve and improve over time, maybe a little nuances, maybe something that I hadn't, maybe a couple came in and they said, may we do this? Like you said, with infidelity or with another aspect of it. And I think, oh, maybe I will suggest that or incorporate that into the next one. So we're starting out with a template, but then the way that I do it is how many hours does it take? Some people want to do something very simple. I'll go with the most simple and maybe one of the most common ones. And that is, someone will come to me and say, we want to make it so that everything each of us had before we were married is 100% our own. Appreciation, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter how it increased in value. We want each other to have 100% of all the assets we own beforehand. And if it was something very simple like that, I've done them and it has cost as little as $3,500. I've done them and maybe it's just over $10,000. But just over $10,000 is frequently people, more high asset people, and they may have clauses that they want. I've seen specific clauses where, after 5 years, if we get divorced, I'm going to give you a property. Or, well, what property is it? Is that fair? What's the value of the property? And we can put in all different types of caveats to make it as fair as possible. And the more caveats and the more provisions you're putting in, and the more meetings you might have, the more time it will take. I've heard, and I'm not casting any aspersions on this, but you hear about California prenuptial agreements where maybe 3 attorneys were involved in the construction of it. It cost $100,000. I'm not saying that's the wrong way to go about it, but whatever the investment is, you're getting that back at least tenfold, if not 100-fold. So the people in California who are worth, a celebrity or a star where they're preserving $500 million, that's not going to cost $10,000. Probably. It's probably going to cost more, but they're going to get the value. And the same thing with someone who only wants a minimum one. For $3,500 to not have to fight over the appreciation and value, to have everything set out beforehand, you're going to save that. Each of you will save that in the attorney's costs, at least going forward. So the cost of it is dependent. Maybe I'm sure there are people who charge less or who charge more, but the most important thing is making sure that it cannot be breached. You want to make sure that you're drafting it and you're putting in these protective provisions to make sure that someone can't say, it was unfair, it was unconscionable, I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't have
Mm.
full knowledge of what my spouse's assets were, or I couldn't have had that knowledge. He told it to me, but I didn't really, I wasn't aware that it could have been much more. You want to do everything you can to make it so that the money you spend on the prenuptial agreement is a guarantee, is like an insurance policy for life. You're paying
Mm.
$10,000 for a prenuptial agreement, and it's complicated and it's specific. It's exactly what you want. Well, if you think of it, it's really like a single lifetime premium insurance policy that never
Hmm.
runs out. That you could use that insurance policy in 5 years. You could use it in 35 years, and it's going to remain valid.
You know what I got out of all of this, John, the most is that again, to go back on communication and how essential it is and so important it is. And, if you can't have a conversation with your partner about something like this and about, hey, is it us or is it the government that's going to decide what happens? That already is going to explain how that relationship is going to unfold. So I appreciate you breaking down all of this. It is a tough topic for many people to have, but be that buffalo, run through the storm, make sure that you have the right kind of communication and that you hire an attorney like John Larochelle at Larochelle Law to walk you through this, to guide you through this, and to figure out a solution for you and your partner. And hopefully, this upfront conversation will only strengthen your relationship so that you are not another one of those 50% getting divorced. John, thank you so much for joining us on The Wealth Architect.
I'm humbled and honored that you had me as your guest. And if I can ever come back and provide any other information to your listeners, I'd be happy to do it. Just remember, invest the small amounts every week, and you will save on losing half of your total assets down the line.
Love it. John, thanks again for all the wonderful information. And God bless you and your family. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care, Emilio.
Hey, stay tuned. We're going to be right back here with one of the top dogs in the real estate industry. This guy is just crushing it. He's got a lot of intel to share. We're going to pick his brain about the up and coming market and also how he started flipping houses and creating wealth, finding opportunities in this real estate market. Just a fascinating gentleman. We'll be right back here on the Wealth Architect Podcast. Have you ever heard of upfront underwriting? Well, I haven't until I started working with Movement Mortgage. Movement Mortgage is one of the top loan originators around the country. Specifically, I want to give a thank you to Matt Bates. And if you're lucky enough to live in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, or New Hampshire, I strongly suggest you contact Matt Bates at rimortgageguy.com. Again, rimortgageguy.com. And he's going to help you to find that dream home. He does upfront underwriting, which means they fully approve you for a mortgage before you even place offers, increasing your chances of winning that dream home. rimortgageguy.com. Season 2, episode 17, segment 2 of the Wealth Architect Podcast. I'm Emilio DiSpirito, and we have an awesome guest here with us today. Somebody who I've admired in my marketplace, who constantly is just knocking the ball out of the park, not only in real estate, running a team, branding, but also creating wealth through flipping. So I wanted to invite this gentleman on today to talk with us, educate us, and offer us some insights on all of those topics. We have Michael Sweeney from the Sweeney Advisory Group, the founder, the team leader, the whole enchilada, and he is with Mott and Chace. Sotheby's Mott and Chace International. Fantastic brokerage here. Ton of respect goes out to you and your brokerage. Welcome to
Thank
the
you so
Wealth
much.
Architect.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Welcome. I love all the swag you got on, the
Yeah,
green,
you
the
know,
gold.
You got to look good if you're going to go on TV or
Yeah.
on a podcast.
That's right. That's right. So, Michael, throughout the years, you've hit the top of the charts selling real estate in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Do you do Mass too?
I do Mass. Yeah, not as much. Focus, I'd say 95% of Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Okay. But either way, regardless of what marketplace you're selling real estate in, it's not a simple career. Okay. Real estate can be somewhat easy sometimes, but it's not simple. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, in your name, I hear advisory.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what your team name means and why you chose advisory?
Sure. So an advisory group to me, or, when you're being advised on something, I always feel that you have trusted experts behind you helping you make a decision.
Mhm.
So when I was, whether you're in banking or you're in finance or, I always feel like you have advisors. And I thought, well, why can't you have advisors in real estate? That's a
Mhm.
huge decision people are making. And it's a big life decision. So when I rebranded, I thought instead of just being a group, being an advisory group might set me apart a little bit from other teams in the sense that I'm not saying makes you better than other teams. It's just we truly do advise people every day. And I think, as you know or see with real estate, that can go far beyond just buying or selling a home.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes I say I feel like I'm 90% a therapist and 10% a salesperson. So I feel like when you're advising people on these really big life decisions, I wanted that in the name just so people knew that that was something we took really seriously, is that we're not just here to buy and sell, but we're here to advise you on different choices and decisions that you're making.
I love that. So well said. Now, how important is your network to you? I'm talking about not only your real estate referral network, your auxiliary services network. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I just got back from California about a month ago. I went to a Sotheby's networking event, and it's called Level Up. And there's about 2,000 of the top producers in the Sotheby's network throughout the country.
Huge. Yeah.
This is not the same one they do that has the, throughout the world agents, but this is throughout the country. And I learned so much from these other agents that are in their top 1% of their states because this network is really strong. And so I've always had a great network here. I think Rhode Island, growing up here and having family and business here means a lot. And I feel that my network has always been well received and it's broad, but this brought me to a different level. And I think that's one of the reasons why going to a company that was bigger and had a national and international exposure was big for me, because I got a whole different type of referral network. And it's already, since that, one conference, what I said a month ago, I got back. Since that one conference, 2 referrals have come in, one from DC, one from Florida.
Love it.
These are things that weren't happening as much before
Yeah.
on a national basis, but I really love that. And so I just joined something called One Trusted Network, OTM, within Sotheby's International Realty. They only take 2 agents per state. It was a really big honor to be asked, but that means that when I go to refer, people go refer to me, they go to those 2 agents and, they ask if they can work with them first and see if it's a right fit. So that, along with deep roots in the state, have been really good as far as my network ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Working for an international real estate company definitely opens you up to referrals from feeder markets, I would imagine,
Yeah.
too, right? So the fact that you went and you got to shake hands with people in those marketplaces in Florida, in DC, which are 2 major feeder markets, are something that I commend you and other real estate professionals on, that take the time to build those relationships. It's not cheap to go to those events. And, if I'm somebody that's going to hire somebody to sell or buy or help me buy a home or an investment property, I want somebody that's invested in the game, that's going out, building their knowledge base, building their network, and can help me not only here in little old Rhode Island, but all over the country and the world. And you're doing that, which is awesome. So also over the years, you've sold a ton of real estate and you've seen your clients build wealth.
Yes.
And, you and I have something in common where I didn't realize this until we started conversating about it, but you also flip homes.
Yes.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about what was the inspiration behind that? And tell us a little bit about a couple of the projects you did.
So the inspiration behind me flipping homes, honestly, since I was a kid, I was in 5th grade when I went to my first open house with my parents. I remember exactly, we were on the east side. That's where I grew up. There was an open house around the corner. It was actually a house my parents ended up buying as our second family home, where we were for 20-something years. And I begged to go. And since I went to that first open house, I begged to go to every weekend. Dad, can we go to, other kids were playing football and baseball.
You
and
were
going
built to be a
I was
realtor.
literally can we go to this open house? And I had a list from the Providence Journal. And, I loved seeing what was behind everyone's door. And I loved seeing, but then watching shows like when I was young, I'm going to date myself, but Trading Spaces or Flipping Out, Property Brothers, all these shows that, you would see people take something not so nice and make it into something beautiful and make it into something that everyone loved.
Yeah.
So that is when I first sort of thought to myself, oh, this is a really cool thing. You can go into some ugly duckling home, put some of your touches on it, and make it something that everyone would sort of see as something beautiful, but something that they could live in. So that was my first flip that I did, was back about 11 years ago. It was a home in Rumford, Rhode Island. Bought it at the auction on the steps. It was going to foreclosure. It was horrible. I mean, everything about it was bad. The kitchen, the bathrooms, you would look at it, most people would look at it and be like, what, how could this ever look good?
Yeah.
And, 8 months later, put it on the market, staged, and sold it for 3 times what I paid for it, which at the time, it was a smaller level, but it was my first entry into this, and I just immediately got the bug.
Yeah, like wow.
Yeah, just like wow. And having multiple offers on something too, when multiple people like what you did. And we learned that just from going into showings and seeing our clients' homes, right? When you see a house that, when I have a listing that goes in multiple offers, I take what I see in that house. What do people love about it? What are the elements that people thought made that house so much more special than 90% of other homes on the market? And you try and incorporate that into all of your flips. And if you can incorporate 5 or 6 things from every house that you see, you're going to come up with like a perfect product.
Oh man, and that's experience that you just can't go to ChatGPT for.
You can go to it for a lot though.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. But I mean, think about that. You're putting all those puzzle pieces together, and it's only as good as what you put into it, though, right?
Absolutely.
So, all right. So we had for several years, all these homes you would go into were white and black and gray, and just that kind of like neutral, kind of minimalistic. I would almost like to say, what's that word? Brutalist type of.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Mm-hmm. All right. So I think that we're getting away from brutalism and we're getting back towards beauty. Would you agree that colors are coming back and in trending? And what colors would you suggest for home flippers in the higher end luxury space? Because that's what you do. What would you suggest that they go for?
So one thing I'll say is I love the black window phase. I loved everything being Chantilly lace white, Benmore. But I never stuck to that full brutalist design aesthetic because I felt that I loved pops of different things everywhere, and that always worked well for me. So my suggestion to people still is that if you have black windows and white walls and some gray, do a powder room with a really expensive wallpaper. Do a really nice light fixture when you walk in. Don't make everything so generic that, it's obviously going to look great, but everyone calls it, people say the Home Depot special. Like you want things to stand out. Spend money on appliances, things that people notice. And if you do a few pops of that here and there, people think, wow, if you're going to spend $3,000 for, a beautiful wallpaper in a powder room, you're not cheaping out on other stuff. And cheaping out isn't necessarily what you're doing, but you are spending less on certain areas than you are on others. But I think adding those really nice elements, pops of color, doing lacquer in some rooms. I just did a bar at my own house in a green lacquer. I did it after the Gardner house in Newport. I actually had to call the designer in New York to find out the exact green, and I did. But it's one of the things when you have white walls and a pop of green, a pop of blue, I think colors are really coming back. So is wallpaper. And spending a little bit more money on some of these rooms, I'm not saying the whole house, can really add to the entire value overall.
That is called being resourceful. And when you're flipping houses, there's so many times where I see flippers make the mistake of either doing too little, shoddy work, awful, I can't stand it, or they're going way over the top, thinking that they're going to live there. They're emotionally tied into this. And I think that those are mistakes, right? So have you ever had a situation where you bought a house, you were going to flip it, and you were like, oh man, and you put either way too little in or way too much in?
Yes. So about 2 years ago, I was working on a project with my sister. We bought a home on the east side. And this is why working with family can be great, but working with family can also be challenging.
Yeah.
And we had some different ideas. She's amazing at what she does. I'm amazing at what I do. My sister's a general contractor, and among other things, but she wanted to spend too much money in certain areas. And I just kept saying, that's not going to get, you're not going to get a return on that. You're not, but at a certain point, I think she was like, let's just go all in. And I think that I've seen it in my own stuff, and I've seen it with clients where I'll be like, don't put that porcelain bathtub in the middle. No one cares about that.
Right.
Or, no one cares that the front entry hall is heated. There's certain things that, yes, if you're going to be doing it for yourself and spending your own money, but going into a flip house, it's not going to get you $100,000 more on the price tag. And so I saw it, and, we probably broke even on that house when we sold it, which was, just every little thing, and you start calculating all the little things that we did. I mean, we didn't need to do Ann Sachs tile. We didn't need to do a Sub-Zero refrigerator. We didn't need to, but those are things at the time that she thought, oh no, let's just go all in because it's a luxury house. Just because it's a high-end or luxury home doesn't necessarily mean that every room has to be the most expensive and, amazing products that you can find. You can still do things at a simpler level that will still look just as good and give the exact same illusion, because frankly, when people move into that house and they have their own furniture and they come in with their own stuff, they're going to make it look different anyway.
That's right.
You kind of want to give them like a palette that's blank enough and clean enough that they can come in and make it their own space. They just don't have to worry about all the stuff that no one wants, HVAC and roof and bathrooms and no one wants to worry about that. But colors and adding different things and adding some light fixtures and making it their own space, everyone's going to do it anyway.
Perfectly put. And that kind of is a good segue into where you've done this personally. You've helped people throughout the years buy and sell homes. You know the intricacies in the marketplace, what buyers want, what they don't, the return on investment for things. And I would say that would make you probably one of the most qualified people to help anybody specifically on the East Side, right? It's where you specialize, to flip homes.
I would say that, yes, I'm qualified. You can only help people as much as they're willing to listen to you.
Yes.
And so my first $1 million plus sale ever on the East Side was a mid-century modern home on the Boulevard. It was 10 years ago now. I just started in real estate, and I met this woman who had a career in flipping homes with her husband. We flipped that house. It went in 3 offers. It was really exciting. Like I said, it was my first 7-digit sale, and I had 3 offers on it, and I was so excited. And we ended up doing 9 more together after that. Before she moved.
Huge.
Yeah, huge. She was a great client, and she introduced me to she's a great friend. She introduced me to a lot of different areas of flipping that I had never thought about before. Like I said, the little pops of things and leaving an original bathroom somewhere, like a powder room that's, more relevant to the age of the home. There were certain things that she taught me that I got. Towards the end, though, I will say, she had this reputation. She put a house on, I get the offers, but she had a good formula until it started being like, well, I can skimp on this and this and this and this because people just like my work. And I remember saying at the time, listen, you gotta, if what you're doing works, don't change it. And don't get that ego, and everyone gets an ego at a certain point, but don't get that feeling like, hey, I can do anything and nothing can ever touch me, because it started to affect, there were 2 properties that affected the numbers, and I saw that happen. I said, that's because, you cut a corner here or didn't do as much here as you would have usually, and people do see that.
Oh yeah.
And people are really, especially when you're in that $1 million, $2 million, $3 million market, people, especially now, are really focused, and they're hyper focused on detail, and they're hyper focused on quality of materials and where you did things and didn't do things. And then everyone's going back to the previous Zillow pictures. Everyone loves to see, what did you do?
True.
And that's always something I say, listen, you can't look at when a house was bought. Some houses people bought 5 years ago for $1 million. They're selling for $1.6 million just because the market went up.
Yeah.
But there's other times when someone buys something and 8 months later, they're trying to sell it for $2 million more.
Yeah.
People want to know, what was the big stuff done here?
Sure.
And I think that instead of getting defensive, a lot of flippers do get defensive. Instead of getting defensive, I always say, put your house on the market with that list already intact. Let them come to the door and almost like nail that in the head right away, and just say, hey, here's what was done. Here's all the stuff you're going to ask about. Now look at the house and see what you think about it. Because everyone wants to know the nitty gritty, and basically they're adding up numbers in their head. And I would say, you really can't, no one should count someone else's money. Everyone says, well, they bought it for X and they're selling for, hey, listen, they did the work.
It's value. They're looking for value.
Right, there's a reason why these people took on this year job that was tumultuous and took up a lot of time. I mean, so there's a price to be paid for that. But there are those clients that just want to buy something fully done. So you have to, be comfortable that you're paying someone a premium, but you're doing that because you don't have to do anything.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So many good points, Michael. Thank you. What is your going into 2026? Okay. There are so many mixed reviews on the market's going to go down. The market's going to go up. It's going to crash. It's going to blow up. It's going to be amazing. 88% of buyers are going to be hitting the market, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I want to hear what Michael Sweeney thinks about the up and coming 2026 market, specifically the luxury sector.
I actually do think, and this is from talking to a lot of colleagues and doing some research myself, I actually think it's going to be a really good year in 2026 for the luxury market. I think that there are people who have been kind of holding out for a bit. And now some of those people that didn't sell last year when it was the luxury market was crazy. At this point last year, I had 4 things under contract over 3 million on the East Side. This year, it's tougher to pull those buyers. But some people are thinking, well, it hasn't gone so far down, but if it goes up again, they want to get in on that action. So I'm seeing people that are calling up now that are saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I should have sold last year. I wasn't quite ready, but now it's kind of the time. I'm seeing prices, starting to creep up again a little bit.
Agreed, yeah.
And I'm seeing homes that have been on the market. I have a home that I've had on the market on and off for, it's been 19 years of my life, but it's been 5. And it's been on and it's over 3 million. And in this past week, 2 offers on it. And in 4 years, 1 before this, and now in the past week, 2. And so now I'm in a situation where I have to go back to these agents and say, hey, I know it's been on for a long time, but there's actually a highest and best type situation. And people, what? And I'm like, well, all of a sudden people just started looking more. So I actually think that the 2026 luxury market, I can talk about the East Side, I can talk about some of the outskirts of Providence. I think it's actually going to be a really good market. I think that rates are starting to get more comfortable in people's minds. They're getting used to them more. It's not so much a shock. And I think that that's going to overall really help everybody in this marketplace.
I like that. I agree with that. I think that inventory has gone up to a point, but I'm starting to see it slowly come back down. Part of that could be seasonality, but I think that 2026 is going to be a year where you're going to want to brace yourself if you're a buyer. And I think the opportunity is right now, is in the winter time, early spring.
Oh, yeah.
I think things are going to get busy again. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Michael Sweeney of the Sweeney Advisory Group of Sotheby's, Mott, and Chace. Thank you so much for jumping in.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Awesome. Great guest. Good stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Wealth Architect Podcast. I'm Emilio DiSpirito. God bless you. We'll see you back here next week.